Welcome, everyone. It's the Mike Tech Show, show number 984. Tonight, going to talk about phobias, and there's a big reason for that because this is April 2nd, and I will explain. RAM and SSD prices skyrocketing, and why? So it's pretty obvious, but then we got ChatGPT to be added to CarPlay, and then some stories from the trenches and some listener email. So first, phobias. I have a phobia that is April 1st. And it just happens to be April Fool's Day, but April 1st, including yesterday, I kind of lay low, keep my head down, don't do anything. I try not to have anything scheduled, try not to plan anything, especially something serious, because I have a history, especially when I was in the corporate world, of horror stories from the trenches of April 1st. Some I can't even speak about. Some I have in the past. But I've had a very bad April Fool's Day in my past, to the point where just even common pranks, people around me and my kids wouldn't do that to me because of the horrible history I have with just terrible, terrible things. Now, this wasn't terrible, it was more funny, but it brought up one of the Cats show, which was early on when I was podcasting. Boy, this is over almost 22 years ago, when my wife did the show and even read the commercials properly and everything, and did it about cats. And I didn't let anybody off the hook. She just said, that's it. It's now a cat show, and went on. And that's the infamous Cat show. And literally the first show that ever generated hate mail for me. And everybody, I was like, what happened to everybody's sense of humor? And you know what it is? At the end of the show, I didn't let everybody off the hook saying, oh, April Fools. I just assumed it was April 1st, releasing the show on April 1st. How could you not think that this was a joke? Anyway, so it was funny, but that wasn't bad. But I have two different jobs where mail servers crashed. You've heard some of those stories. There's two that involve police and things that I wasn't personally involved in, but that it was just ugly. And anyway, so it made me think about phobias. So what is a phobia? It's an intense, irrational fear of a specific object, situation, or activity that is stronger than the actual danger involved. Phobias can cause avoidance and physical anxiety symptoms like a racing heart, shortness of breath, or panic. And I want to know, especially, is there anything in the tech world? Do you have phobias? Like, to me, Friday the 13th, it's just another day. It doesn't bother me. But I know people that have had like bad histories. Like, I don't mind scheduling a project on Friday the 13th, and I've done that. Breaking a mirror, or there's just so many different things, superstitions, and but mine is April 1st, and that's and I wanted to know if anybody has any stories like that, or you want to share something. I was going to look it up. There's a fear. The only other fear I have, which a long time ago I talked about, is bridges. Going over very high bridge, I have a problem. I literally have a panic attack when I go over that. And I know there's a friend of Marv who's a doctor who listens to, he used to listen to the show and wanted to help me, and I never took him up on that. To overcome that fear. But it's not a fear of heights. I can go high, but it's bridges, and there's certain bridges I can't drive over. So I visited San Francisco several times and would not drive over the Golden Gate Bridge. So anyway, a little into me with the phobias. And hey, email me, miketechshow@gmail.com, and I will talk about it. So RAM. And this is my opinion from an IT procurement standpoint. So memory and storage markets now, since it's the beginning of, we're now a few months into 2026, they're showing classic supply constrained behavior, and it's all driven by AI related demand. And the most important issue is not just end user inflation, but allocation pressure. So with DRAM and capacity, so now we got SSDs being impacted, is being redirected towards higher value AI and enterprise workloads. So we can blame AI now for, it reduces the availability for standard desktop, laptop, and even some server-oriented purchasing channels. This is like what Bitcoin did to the graphics cards. Now we got AI doing this for RAM. Or is it all a big excuse to just raise prices? I'm not going to go down that road, but you definitely could. Now for DRAM, the key concern is the DDR5 pricing. That's the current RAM. And I just got into this. We had to order a system for a client where I'm doing some co-work with another MSP, and he's got to order a computer for St. Pete, where I got to go next week, and he's going to be shipping me the computer. And one of the things we talked about is if he had to order that from scratch, he's just using parts that he already has in inventory, and he's selling them at the proper prices from what he purchased rather than marking them up ridiculous. That is very, very nice for the client, but he's going with a system that's been sitting there, but it's not that old, but it's still DDR5, but he bought it before these crazy increases, which is interesting. Should you start buying? I would. And I started thinking, like, what am I going to buy? And I'm thinking 8 gig RAM sticks, because you can just put one, but I would never do that. I'm always going to want 16 gigs. So you get, laptop 8 gig RAM, desktop 8 gig RAM, and now you can, put 32, 64, 16. You always got your multiples of 8. So I'm thinking that's a safe purchase. I'm rationalizing. So now this impacts refreshing workstations. So small servers and spares should assume higher bills of material cost and weaker price declines than historically expected. If you're managing standardized systems, the usual strategy of waiting for quarterly price relief is much less reliable right now. So if you are procuring for your company any kind of the new systems, you got to jump on it now before they just keep going up. And on the storage side, NAND is experiencing similar pressure. SSD pricing is rising because the NAND wafer allocation is tight, and the market is prioritizing enterprise and AI infrastructure demand. This affects both client devices and server upgrades, especially when you're quoting 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, or higher capacity SATA and NVMe drives. For procurement, this means replacement cycles, imaging stock, and spare inventory should be reviewed sooner rather than later. The broader procurement implication is that you should treat memory and SSDs as volatile commodities, not stable line items. Like, that's what I used to do. It was always stable. Now, I'm always afraid to invest, since I'm such a small company. I'm always afraid to buy with afraid that the price is going to drop, and then I'm eating, the higher prices that I procured it. So, but now seems a safe time to jump on purchasing. And if you have upcoming hardware refreshes, it may make sense to lock pricing early. And so you want to tell management that if you're reporting to someone, increase approved alternatives on your hardware standards and avoid waiting until the last minute to buy critical spares. For environments with strict standardization, consider pre-approving equivalent part numbers across multiple vendors, especially when it comes to RAM. You can buy from so many different manufacturers. For budgeting, I'd expect to continue upward pressure through at least the near term, especially where AI demand continues pulling supply away from the mainstream channel. In other words, this is not a simple retail markup problem. It is a structural allocation issue affecting both availability and life cycle costs. So all of your clients, my clients that have a 5-year life cycle and they're coming up on it, now's the time you want to jump on them and tell them to lock in so you can start ordering and get everything before it just keeps going totally out of control. And that's where, it's crazy. It's like the graphics cards. And now we're starting to see real serious costs. People who've waited and they're not getting the hardware, now you're going to pay some serious money now, or you're going to hang on to it longer. Even I'm thinking of my hardware here, which is still fine for what I'm doing, but it's going on 6 years old. I think it turned 6 this June when I got my Beast 2. So that's a long time. I normally, turn it around faster than that. Now I'm thinking, boy, I may hang on to this for a little more. It's running Windows 11 Pro. I have 64 gigs of RAM. I have tons of hard drive space. It's doing everything I need to do in my show. And so these are things that now I will stop and think about it before I upgrade. Now it makes me think I am so glad I upgraded my system in Pennsylvania last year, where I finally redid the system and put 2 4 terabyte NVMEs in there. And I'm glad I locked that in with the Samsung prices before that went crazy. And that's why I bought 2 of them. And you got to start thinking that now, because it's already high, and pretty soon it's going to get out of touch. So speaking of AI, I'm going to share, and this is the first link for tonight, and this is what I've read in Mac Rumors. Give me a second here. And this is OpenAI brings ChatGPT to CarPlay for hands-free voice conversations. This pretty cool. And you can now talk to ChatGPT driving. So I don't know how much I would want to do that with actual driving. Maybe I'd be parked or something while I'm, waiting to go into a client or waiting for someone. It's going to be very interesting. And CarPlay has supported third-party apps for years, but Apple limits the types of apps that are available to cut down on driver distractions. Exactly. Apple has a list of allowed app categories, which includes audio apps, communication apps, EV charging apps, and navigation apps. Now, the ChatGPT integration will let users ask questions hands-free, but the chatbot is not able to control vehicle or iPhone functions. There is no wake word, so users will need to open the ChatGPT app to use it. Just something interesting that I wanted to share, because I love Apple CarPlay. I live with it. I use it, I think, every day. I mean, even when I'm going to somewhere where I know where to go, it's nice to have that. I have that in my schedule. So I always have my calendar where I click and I open up where I'm going, because it tells me how long it's going to be. So I get the traffic. I know like a perfect example, when I'm going to the Phillies game, I know I'm about 15 minutes. Well, if it all of a sudden says it's a half hour, maybe I'll take a different route, or maybe do something different and change, how I'm going to get there, or maybe where I'm going to park. Go to a different section of the stadium that because of the less traffic. I live on Apple CarPlay. So does my son, I know. And I know a lot of you probably do. Now, given that, and I started thinking about AI, and here's what I wish for AI. And I know they're piloting it in a couple cities. And boy, if you know, or if you're near one of these cities where it's controlling the traffic lights, let me know. I desperately want that, especially in Florida. If you haven't been in Florida, you've heard of the tremendous delays for lights. It just seems like you're sitting there forever at a red light. And I was doing that the other day. I'm sitting at a light and there's no cross traffic. And I'm thinking, if AI was invoked on all of the traffic, especially major intersections, think of how easy that would be, where I would trust AI to decide the better flow. Like if there's a moment where there's a lot of traffic and it clears up, well, why wait on a timer and just have it automatically flip? Okay, hey, maybe we got nobody turning left. Okay, well, we're not going to turn on left for that. It's something that I always mention when I'm in a traffic jam and I'm sitting at a light. I'm like, I wish that there was AI here that would definitely organize it and make it, that's another thing to let me know. Where do you want to see AI where, it's not taking someone's job, or maybe it is, but to help make your life better? That to me, all the traffic lights, that's what I want to see. So let me know what your wish is for AI and email me. That would be very, very, very cool. So a couple stories from the trenches. Continued CPA support. So we have one big CPA client that, well, we have a couple CPA clients, but we have one really big client that I had to help people where the VPN was broke. So they use OpenVPN. I have an Arista firewall, and I've had to reset up some users, download the config file, and then load it. So we were able to, I was able to synchro in, and in one case, instant house call in, to be able to fix them up. And that has been happening. Now, yesterday morning was interesting. An update or something that kills where the system, they all have BitLocker encryption because they're all Windows 11 Pro, and it doesn't boot. It needs the BitLocker key. Well, we gave the BitLocker key. We have it, and it didn't work. It would not work. And we know this was the proper key because I have a script in Synchro that I run across all of our assets that we manage, and it will pull the BitLocker key and put it in a field that I have set up. So this way we always have it. If anybody needs it, we could just go right into our RMM and I can pull that out. Well, this didn't work, so my son had to go on site and physically redo the system. There's no data on these systems. They live in the cloud, the CPA. So, it's just blowing it away literally and then setting up the VPN and, just setting up a couple configurations and that's it. So, just wanted to talk about that. Now, here's something interesting that I want to share. This is another single CPA who's an older gentleman, and I might have told some stories where he was in the hospital and he was in rehab, and so he doesn't have the money, and he has Pro Series, and it's 2025 basic, and he ran into a problem. His system is Windows 10 Pro, It can't upgrade, and he can't afford to upgrade. So we're still helping him. And when it installed, and I think I mentioned that you can say, yes, you know it's not supported, but you can continue and use it. We just learned something from Intuit that I want to share. He can do individual returns, but it won't let him do a corporate return because of the operating system, because it's Windows 10. And that's very interesting right now. So what he's going to do is build up the funds that, we can at least go halves or something. I'm going to work with him. I'm going to, to do what we can, and then get him an upgraded system. I'm even looking, I'm going to have my son take a look and, what can we do with a refurb that can legitimately run Windows 11 Pro, get that into his hands and we can start setting that up so we could do corporate returns, because it's a catch-22. How does he make the money if he can't process the returns and charge the client? I get it. I understand. So that's one problem. I have another idea that I'm working on, and I'll let you know if this works. But this was confirmed by Intuit. So now I want to get to some email, and I want to let's take a look. Got 4 emails here, and I got one this is from Don, and he goes, Mike, as I recalled, you had an episode where you discussed the presentation you were preparing for seniors on how to avoid scams, and that you had a PDF, or was it a PowerPoint presentation? It was a PDF on the subject. Can you tell me where I can find that, or what episode, if you can recall, that it was discussed? Don, as I do the show notes for tonight, I will link that show and the PDF, because I don't think it was that long ago. It might have been less than a year. I will find that, and you're right, it was a PDF. It was a one sheet that I think any senior should absolutely have. It's our basic tips on cybersecurity, and I highly recommend it. So just since Don asked for that, I'm going to make sure it's in the show notes for tonight. This is Will, and it's a follow-up to when he was having a problem, and I gave him with his client, and I gave him some things to try, and it was that browser issue. And he says, thank you for your advice on your recent podcast and for asking your audience for any further tips and tricks to resolve my client's issue. I have an update based on your recommendations. 1. Does Microsoft Edge automatically log off these websites like Chrome does? No. It keeps all the websites logged in even after a restart has been performed. So just move them to Edge, Now, I recommended Revo Uninstaller. Remove Chrome using Revo Uninstaller and see if it fixes the issue. He replies, I did this, and initially Chrome stayed logged in after being closed, but after I restarted the computer, Chrome automatically logged out all of the websites. So my third recommendation was create a temporary user profile and see if the issue occurs there. And he replies, unfortunately, I didn't get to try this because my client didn't want to pay anything further to troubleshoot. I get that. I think she is getting used to logging in, and she could always open Edge if she wanted. She has the right to say, I don't want to pay for further troubleshooting, and I have the right to move on to other paying clients. If your audience comes up with some other quick things to check, I will reach back out to her. Yes, I understand. So this is where it's only Chrome, and she's automatically logged out of websites that she signs in. Now, from a security standpoint, that's not a bad thing. We don't mind that. I try to encourage users, especially anybody in an office, to not save your passwords and your credentials. case the system's compromised. You don't want them saved. So figured I would I would share that. Thank you if you have any idea. So 2 links from Kate. So I want to bring them up, and these are the next 2, and it's 2 emails, and it's 2 links that Kate sent me, and one, and I love what Kate put in the subject line, and it was Danger Will Robinson. And Kate and I both have a love-hate relationship with Evernote. As you know, I keep bringing it up. Kate's still looking for that alternative, as I do, and we will keep you informed. We keep, we're going to die using Evernote probably and never find the replacement. But this love-hate relationship has now, they're introducing a new Evernote. And this is why it's like, oh my gosh. Now, when I said Danger Will Robinson, some of you were like, what's that reference to? Well, that was the robot in Lost in Space. And Will Robinson was the kid, and he would go, danger, danger. Anyway, you could see I'm a product of the 60s. So love that show. Love Lost in Space. So this is, now it's interesting, the original link that Kate sent me does not work. Evernote's having a problem. So I found where the new features are, and the new Evernote 11 is here, an important milestone. Okay, they're embracing AI. So new powerful AI features. Everybody it's always AI. So the AI assistant, search and retrieve content directly from the chat window, modify or generate content, execute actions across the account. Okay, I can like move it to a notebook, move a note, search the web without leaving the Evernote environment. I don't know if I'm comfortable totally with that. Semantic search. So different settings options. Take a look. This is the list. I don't need to review them all, especially if you're not using Evernote, but Evernote is coming up with a lot of changes, and when they make changes, boy, very, 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 yes, we should be scared. Things are going to break. Things aren't going to be right, because they never, ever, ever get it right every update. And I guess before and after, it's a lowercase e, I guess. We know we're on the new version. So, all right. So, another fun link, since Kate and I are both baseball fans, and she's a huge fan of St. Louis Cardinals, as I'm a big Phillies fan. So a little lighter for today to finish off the last link. And this is interesting because I never bring food into Citizens Bank Park, but this article is referencing the Inquirer, and it's a food newsletter, and which I found more interesting than this. Citizens Bank Park, which is where the Phillies play up in Philadelphia, allows spectators to bring their own food inside Phillies games. Now, you can bring liquid, but it's got to be sealed. You can't bring in a bottle of water where the cap is already loose. They will test. But you could bring in sealed bottles. That I knew. And you have to put everything in a clear bag. And it's got to be of a certain size. So, but you can bring food. You could pack sandwiches. You can, which is unusual for a ballpark like that, because they want you to buy their food. So that, I mean, with the prices so high to go see a baseball game, it's nice if you get, inexpensive seats. Bring some bottles of water that are sealed. You can always, when they're empty, you can go fill them up at a water fountain. And bring your own, lunches. That's an idea. That's a way to save some money. Anyway, Kate, thanks for sharing that. But what I found more interesting is this whole food article on that website, which I'm now looking at, which talks about restaurants, talks about some of the best food in Philly and some of the other things. And it's not just Philly oriented. So I really like that. So, or is it? Yeah, because they have Craig LeBon's reviews. Now, interesting. Craig LeBon is the food critic for the Philadelphia Inquirer. And what he did, yeah, this is Philly related, as I'm pretty sure here, because especially when I seen Craig LeBon, he was a client of mine, and one of the things he made me swear to, and he was referred to from a friend. This is years ago. I haven't helped him in a long time, but I worked on his computer and his wife's computers and keep them going for a couple of years while I was in the city. And he said, please don't share, anything with my face, because he's anonymous. And when he's reviewing a restaurant, they don't know he's the food critic. So he's sort of anonymous, and that was kind of cool. He always has, great reviews of all the restaurants. Anyway, just an interesting thing and a tie-in because he was actually a client. So I don't know what's happened to him. It's been a while. It's been a long time. And he lives right in the middle of Center City, Philadelphia, too. Okay. That is it for tonight's show. I want to thank everybody for downloading and staying subscribed. Don't forget, it's the main website, MikeTechShow.com, and you'll have all of tonight's links. And I want everybody, tonight is, as I'm recording this on Thursday night, Passover. So if you're celebrating, happy Passover. If you're celebrating Easter, happy Easter, which is this Sunday. And that's it. I'll see everybody next week. Don't forget, email me your thoughts and suggestions and things I've asked for feedback on MikeTechShow@gmail.com. Subscribe and like on YouTube, youtube.com/Michael Smith MTS. That's it. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Bye-bye.